so the interrupt buffer, it is a technique. Okay, it is a technique used in agile software development to manage interruptions and unexpected work that may arise during a sprint. It involves allocating a buffer of time to handle these interruptions while still allowing the team to focus on delivering the sprint backlog items. And we call product backlog items the PBIs, right? And so one of the benefits of having this interrupt buffer is that it's going to increase productivity. You should have better planning, and it should improve the overall performance of your team. So that's one of the things. One of the goals of the Scrum Master, we know, is to keep your team focused and productive. So by allocating this buffer of time, you're able to handle interruptions, and it also allows the team to stay focused on their primary task, avoiding getting sidetracked, avoiding, any unexpected work. So a good example is I had a team, and as soon as I got them, the first thing I always do when I look at my teams is I look at their burn down charts. And one thing I realized is that they had a lot of ups and downs in their burn down. And that was because work was coming in, unexpected, unplanned work was coming into their sprint, interrupts. And so immediately I use this technique to help them manage those interruptions. And so we're going to talk about what that looks. So what it helped me with was better sprint planning, better time management, and it allowed the team to focus on what really was high priority. Understanding interrupts may come in, but we created a buffer to handle those interruptions within the sprint, thus being able to deliver our backlog items now on time, where before they were carrying work over from one sprint to another. With the interrupt buffer, they were now able to complete all of their committed work. Yesterday's weather, just is all it's saying is that I'm going to look at what the team did the last sprint, and I'm going to use that as my gauge for the upcoming sprint. And so based on that, so for example, if the team completed 20 story points last sprint, we can use it as a baseline for estimating that they can do the similar amount of work in the upcoming sprint. Because yesterday they did 20, so that means the upcoming one, they should be able to do 20. Okay, so velocity is looking over a time period of 3 to 4 sprints, and yesterday's weather is just looking at what happened last sprint. That's it. So looking at these 4 sprints, their completed work, what would you say their velocity is?
8 to 10, 8 or 8 to 10.
Their velocity would be about an 8. So then thinking about yesterday's weather, right? Here's their interrupts, right? What would we say? We about to plan a new sprint. What would you say their yesterday's weather would be for interrupts? So you want to see their velocity is around 8, and just looking at yesterday, what we say the interrupt is?
Is it 3?
Yep, it's going to be 3 because we're looking at yesterday's weather.
Oh, okay.
We're looking at what happened last sprint.
Makes sense.
Right? Because the key word is yesterday, right? Yeah, what happened to that yesterday sprint? What happened in that last sprint, right? So we can say the velocity is 8, but based on we know, it could be, it could be the interrupts are getting less and less. It was 4, right? Now it's down to 3. It could be it's getting less and less. So based on last sprint, we can say we're gonna have a buffer of 3. And so now we have our buffer. It's all about now. This is where like Natasha comes in as a product owner, because now it's all about prioritization. You have to prioritize your interrupts. So that's where interrupt management comes in. And this is where the PO has to be aware of any new interrupts that come into the system. They should be involved in deciding how they are prioritized. Okay, so the PO is dealing with the business, the line of business, the stakeholders, dealing with development leads and managers. making sure that they are fully aware of all the interruptions that are coming to their team and they're managing them. So every iteration should be all about delivering value. So that's where prioritization comes in. So the PO has to be on top of those interrupts. Communicate it down. Let's be flexible and let's see based on priority. Let's see if it makes sense for it to go into this sprint. And sometimes people think like, oh, it's urgent. I got to get into this sprint. And then when the product owner talks to them, you realize it really can wait. But that's where the product owner has to have those conversations so that we can make sure that we are only pulling in the most high valued user story into our interrupt buffer. So that's where their partnership comes between us and the product owner. So now we know, like that sprint, right? That sprint had our buffer would be 3. So what happens if, we're like, okay, we're going to allocate 3 points to the buffer. What happens if more work comes in? That happens, right? So Natasha says to the product owner, okay, our interrupt buffer is 3, but you have a high level stakeholder saying, but I need this, but the buffer is full. This is when we have to negotiate, okay? Because when the interrupt buffer is full and new interruptions continue to come in that are high priority, we call them the PBIs. That's when we need to start replanning that sprint work. We need to look at the sprint work, reprioritize. And y'all know my famous saying, if something is now high priority, that means something has been deprioritized. And we do that negotiating. So this is where, if it's full, this is where we're going to look at adjusting our plan to either move work that is in the current sprint backlog out to the backlog. If it's that high priority, we either need to negotiate and move something in. Remember, something high priority comes in, something else has now been deprioritized, and we push it to the backlog. Or, the team may say, maybe we can get it in, right? Or we can abort. What does that mean? That means we cancel all the work in our sprint that has not been completed. Then we cancel all unfinished work, making room for the high priority item. And that means any work that was not started, that's not completed during that sprint, it goes into the backlog. Any work that has started and completed, we continue to accept it. So we may have to either negotiate high priority in, deprioritize now to the back, or we may have to abort, just wrap up what's completed. We're going to go back, replan for this new high priority work and get our next sprint ready. Okay, so that means creating a new sprint backlog based on the selected PBIs. The team should be able to create a new sprint backlog now with the most highest priority items in it, and still having that buffer for if something new happens to pop up in the rise. Okay, because at the end of every iteration, our goal is to achieve our sprint goal. Every iteration, sprint over sprint, we want to make sure that we are hitting our commitments and achieving our sprint goal. Because in doing so, when we do that, right, we create what's called a generative pattern. That means limit the size of the interrupt buffer, prioritize interrupts based on their priority, scheduling time to handle those interrupts so that the team can reduce the amount of context switching, going back and forth between different features, back and forth in the code, right? And we have to monitor our interrupt trends. And so the whole key to the interrupt buffer pattern is that if we do this and create this generative pattern, then we as a team, we should be able to finish early. So as the team becomes more efficient at handling interrupts, then they are more likely to finish all of their planned work early. That is the key. That's the key. So this gives the team more focus on improving their quality of the product, taking additional work in that can add value to the product. Remember, those interrupts, they're valuable. So if we can create this buffer, then we can take in those pieces of work that continue to add value to our product, and we continuously improve our processes by reducing interruptions, and therefore the team will become more efficient and more effective in delivering high quality products.